Today on Testify, we have Kirk Driskell, the founder and CEO of Vision Warriors Men's Recovery. Kirk, glad to have you here today.
Man, it's awesome to be here. Thanks for letting me come share my story.
This has been an opportunity that I've very much looked forward to since I've had Parker on our show 3 weeks ago. And we're just going to dive right in and learn a little bit more about your story, kind of how Vision Warriors was developed and created. So kind of take me back to your mid-20s, early 20s of kind of your story.
Yeah, so really I guess where my story would start, or my recovery story would start, is April 24th, 1995. So that was the last drink or drug that I had. I had some big plans. The Olympics were around the corner, coming to Atlanta. And I had some big plans for my 21st birthday and all those kind of college party ambitions, I should say. And let's just say that the train wreck occurred, and I needed to jump off that train because it wasn't going to roll anymore.
What were some of the circumstances that led up to that train wreck?
So the circumstances look different for everyone. Right, especially for the men that we serve today. We serve some early 20s and 20 to 26-year-old guys. So the circumstances may look different, but the symptoms or the pieces of the circumstances are the same, which is I was self-centered and self-focused. If you had it and I wanted it, then I wanted it. It didn't matter you didn't want to give it to me, or that I didn't deserve it, or anything of that nature. It was just really just self-focused inward and not looking outward of how I can be of service to someone else. It's basically a leech on society rather than someone's helping to nourish and feed the community around me, rather than just sucking the life out of it. So, those are the conditions, or where my mind and my heart and my focus was. And circumstances, I was president of my college fraternity. I thought the things that I was doing is what everybody was doing around me. They may start with you at 9 o'clock at night, but they're not still standing with you at 3 a.m. Those without my condition of self-focus at that point in time, they had left and seen things differently. But it's really, it's interesting when you talk with men and ladies that are all in recovery, and everybody's bottom looks different. At 20, I hadn't lost a wife, I hadn't lost businesses, I hadn't lost a car. I was missing first dates, I was missing pledge parties, I was missing, dates with this person and invites to this party or those type kind of things. I wasn't, my life wasn't unraveling. I was unraveling.
Was there a specific situation that kind of was the final catalyst for you to say, this has gotten out of control?
I was I was out of control. I just didn't realize to what extent I was out of control. And when I had myself was removed from it, then I could see more clearly, right? It was a phone call, and it was my father that called me one afternoon, early evening, and said that my mother was sick, something was going on, they needed to take her to the hospital, if I could come home, because I was going to Reinhardt College, Reinhardt University now, and if I could come home so I could watch be there with my sister until they got back and just come in. So what I didn't realize, I was walking into an intervention. And really that opportunity I took and grabbed a hold of. I didn't realize how bad I was looking for a way out, but I didn't know how to get out.
What were the signs that your parents and those closest to you had seen that brought them concern?
It was my sister, her boyfriend, now husband, and I had used and drank together a little bit, but they knew some of my friends, and they had talked to some others and had just seen the deterioration around me. And it's not the arrest and all those things. There was nothing substantial, right? It was, when I say substantial, it was teenage type kind of trouble and activities. I hadn't done any federal time and hadn't been locked up for this, no DUIs. And, but Alpharetta was a small town in the mid 90s. It's different today. And so that undertone was there, but it just was, I didn't hang around and I wasn't wanting that attention. It was more maintenance and it was more lifestyle, just how I was navigating through life to feel full and to feel whole. It wasn't, hey, look at me type kind of attention outwardly to everyone. But, my grades were all right in school. But everything else was pretty much a mess in my personal life, my relationships with women, my, commitment to others, and everything was focused. I was focused, not everything. I'm going to rephrase. Everything was not focused on me. I was focused on me and what I wanted. The world was not.
So take me back to that day where your mom, your dad, your sister, her now husband are in the room. What did that experience? What do you remember of that day?
I remember walking up the stairs. My parents' bedroom, when you came up top of the stairs, was on the right. Mine and my sister's was down to the left. And I remember walking up and I could hear my mother and them in there, and she was crying. And it's like, man, what the heck is going on? And when I walked into their room, I could see that this wasn't what I thought it was. She's fine. She's here. What the heck's going on? And they started that conversation. I can only imagine how difficult it was for them and the fear that they had and the concern that they had.
So was it one of the ones where everybody in the room went around and voiced their concerns? Is there anything vivid?
It's my dad. It was just really my dad. The thing that was vivid for me was that guilt and shame that I had been carrying that you didn't know how to get rid of. That at 20, at 50, at 60, guilt and shame will hold on to you if you let it. And I didn't have the skill or the knowledge or the ability at that point in time to really figure out how to navigate through releasing that and talking through it and dealing with it. And I remember not all the words, but just how on one side I was relieved. Like, I've got an opportunity to get out of this. On the other side, it was utter shame and disappointment and fear of, man, I've let them all down. Like, I'm going to have to let out all my dirty secrets, all the stuff that I've been keeping hidden from everyone. No one knew it all, right? People knew bits and pieces, but now it's got to all come clean.
Did that happen that day, or was that a process?
Yeah, it was a process. So it started there. We addressed it. They had already made some phone calls and done a little homework on trying to figure out what would be a best opportunity or a best situation for someone that's 20. What does it look like? And so, you have school to unwind. You've got a house with roommates. You've got all those circumstances. But yet at the end of the day, the focus then is back on, hey, I got to get healthy. And so, the next day I had some things that I needed to take care of, and just get some things straightened, and they were doing some work. And so that evening I went back home, back to where I was living, with the roommates, kind of get everything in order. And the next morning, mid-morning, I checked into a 30-day treatment facility here in Atlanta. And so that was I'm grateful that it was there, because I experienced and met one guy that was not a doctor or anybody that was on staff, and nothing wrong with doctors or staff. It's just that that point in time in my life, when you're sitting there and they're saying, hey, look to your left and look to your right, possibly one of y'all won't be back here. Everybody else, hey, relapse is just, it's okay. It's, it's like, no, relapse is not a part of recovery. Relapse is a part of active addiction, right? It's failure to maintain a lane. It doesn't have to happen. It does, but it's not a part of recovery. And I remember that it's just like, man, this is a waste of money. Like, my parents are sending me here. All these people are crazy. I'm not crazy. I got a drug problem, not a drinking problem. You know, is what I was thinking. But there was a guy that came in there, and I can't tell you if he was black or white. I can't tell you if he was 6 foot tall or 4 foot tall. I mean, I'd give anything if I could identify who it was. And he'd come in and he'd run kind of an AA style meeting inside the treatment facility. And the one thing I remember about the guy is he was always smiling and happy. I'm like, what's up with this? This guy's coming to hang out with a bunch of just crazy folks. Not me, but them, right? I mean, why? What? He's not getting paid. Like, he's wanting to do this. I mean, it's service work, right? He's wanting to do this. And I remember I was asking him. It was like 1 or 2 days before I got out. You know, within several days of me leaving, I was like, man, what do you do and how do you do this after here? And he's like, you need to go to a meeting. You know, go to an AA meeting. And he handed me a pamphlet. Back in the day, it was a pamphlet. You didn't get an iPhone with fancy this and fancy that. It was just a pamphlet. And so he gave me that pamphlet and he said, you just need to go to a meeting when you get out and just keep going to meetings, get a sponsor, work the steps and serve others. I mean, that sounds pretty easy at 20. I mean, that's, you know, it's there. So the first day I got out, that's what I did. I went to a meeting.
So what did your life look like post that treatment center?
Post the first day I got out, I went to a meeting. And I remember the drive back up north on 400 with my parents. They were driving me. I'm in the back. And we're just talking, you know, it's like right now I just didn't want to be, I was afraid, and fear was what was keeping me sober. Not a relationship with God, not being well equipped with a lot of tools to stay sober. It was pure fear of, I don't want to disappoint my parents again right now. And so I had an address, and it was Alpharetta Health Center in downtown Alpharetta. That building used to be there, or it used to be there. It's not there anymore. And so that address is all that I had in the time. And so that's where I went that evening. And when I walked in the door, the front door of the health center, there was a meeting going on, but it was the Alpharetta Planning Commission, or a park and rec, some kind of planning commission meeting for the city of Alpharetta. So it was the wrong meeting, the right building, the right address, but the wrong room. And there was a guy that was there that gave me, he just looked up when I busted up his meeting, which ties into my Rotary side of my life here. 20 years later, I found out who it was. He looked up and he saw someone that was looking for something that was not his meeting. And he directed me to 50 feet away, the other door I needed to go in. And so forward momentum could have stopped right then, because I didn't want to be in that meeting. I didn't want to go there. I wanted to go get high, right? Like life is easier at that point in time for me, high, not sober. So I could go home, you know, and say, hey, I tried, but they're not meeting where they said they were meeting. But he gave me that 50 feet. I walk around the corner to the other door, and then there was a bunch of old dudes in there, you know, and I'm like, yeah, see, I know I don't have a drinking problem. I got a drug problem, not a drinking problem. An old timer is what we call them. And now I guess I'm one. It's not so much what your physical age is here on this earth, but how much time you've been spending in the program, right? You just been there for a minute. One of those old timers looked at me, and I probably was smirk and looked obnoxious walking through the door, like I'm better than all y'all, and y'all got problems I don't have, right? Type deal. And I'll never forget, he's looked at me, walked up to me, and kind of said, you just need to look for the similarities, not the differences. And I started saying something, and he's like, yeah, now just sit down and shut up. You ain't got nothing to say that I need to hear. You want to talk? Get you a sponsor. I'm like, man, this guy is a prick. But it's what I needed to hear. At the end of that meeting, that one or second or third, within the first 2 or 3 meetings, one of the old timers walked up to me and said, look, we'll give you everything you're looking for free with a condition. And that condition is to keep what we're going to give you, you must give it away daily. Because if not, there's no way that you'll be able to maintain it. When you have nothing except a whole load of fear and unmet expectations that you think you should be doing and things you think you should have at 20, you know, that's the only 2 things I had. I didn't have a big job and a house and a wife and kids and all that. I mean, I was some cash in a pocket, some cash in an account, and, you know, living underneath my parents' wing, right? If we're being honest. So yeah, sure, I'll give away what I got. I ain't got nothing really to give but time, you know, and intentional relationships and service. And so the question that started that long answer is my life after my first meeting, not after treatment. Treatment separated me from my destruction, my self-sabotage, the symptom, or not the symptom, but the solution that I was using to fix my emptiness. But the symptoms and all the issues were me. You know, before I started drinking, the problem was me, right? Before I started using dope, the problem was me. When I quit using, the problem's still me. Now, what am I gonna do about it? And so after is focused on others. You know, how can I be of service to someone else? The first probably 10 years, 8 years in recovery, pretty much all my service was focused inside the rooms of AA, inside of treatment centers, inside of nonprofits focused on that. And it wasn't until I joined a Rotary Club to where my ability to serve the community at large, all the opportunities really opened up.
Tell us more about that. So before we go there, I do want to pause and just kind of touch base. So you had talked about fear was your motivating factor. At what point did more of your bigger purpose replace fear?
Yeah. So I say that fear, like I was saying, is what kept me sober probably the first 30 days, right? Like, I don't want to upset my parents. I don't want to let them down. They just spent all this money. Now I just need to stay sober. I need to convince them, really. I need to convince them. I'm going to do enough investigation to convince them that I'm not an alcoholic. I had a drug problem, but I can go back to college and drink and party, and that's going to be okay, right? Like, I know more than the doctors know. They don't know me. I'm special, right? And at some point there, man, I wish I could tell you that there was a day and time to where my mindset shifted, but there wasn't a date and time. Through the first 30, 60 days of being sober, I realized that my concept of God, like, you know, that truly believing that there's a God and that believing that God can restore me to sanity, right? There's one thing to believe that there's a God. There's another thing to believe that thing, right? That God, that person, that God can restore me to sanity. Like, I would love to know the date and time to where it actually shifted. And some people have that. Some people can say, man, they were delivered on this day and time in this event over this prayer or something that happened in their life. I don't have that. I have a progression of daily disciplines that just allowed me the time to just kind of breathe and accept the fact that I got to surrender this daily, that I cannot do this alone. If I do, I'm going to end up back in the ditch, right? If I surrender it daily and accept the fact that I'm powerless to drugs and alcohol, right? And in my case, only through a relationship with Christ and a true dependency on, am I going to be able to gain the strength and the courage and the wisdom and the knowledge to go through my day? Because I fought it, man. I mean, I'm being honest. I fought it. I was 20 years old and I wanted to live life the way I was living it, right? Selling dope. I wasn't a drug dealer because I didn't use it to make money. I spent all the money, right, with my friends at parties, or better this or better that for experience, right? I was the friendly dope dealer. You know, I was the life of the party. Now, how am I going to do that if I'm not drinking? How am I going to do that if I'm not drunk? So I fought every bit of it. And at some point, though, man, it shifted to where it's like, man, life is enjoyable. Like, I'm actually enjoying life, and I'm not waking up every morning feeling like crap and got to do something to make myself feel better, to get out of bed, to go to school, to go through life, right? It doesn't make it easy, right? And life doesn't get any easier, but it does become clearer of what your purpose is. And
That's a good segue. One of my mentors in my probably mid to late 20s, a guy by the name of Chuck Bray, he used to always tell me, don't waste your pain. And I didn't understand that at the time, but now I understand that, our past pain oftentimes is the highway, the gateway to our longer term purpose. Like you, I have a similar addiction story, and I look at the work that you're doing with Vision Warriors and kind of how that was birthed. Take us through that process of the 10 years, and then kind of lead us up to some of the things you're doing now with Vision Warriors, and how that past pain is now being used for purpose
Yeah.
to rescue the fallen man behind you.
Yeah. So it was one of my first sponsors. It was a old school AAs was a little, and I'm still just a little brash at two times. Like I have to continually remind myself and have men around me that remind me that I can't lead my family and love my wife like I do a sponsee, right? Like she always tells me I'm black and white. Well, to me, gray is going to get you killed, right? Like it's either, hot or cold. Don't give me a lukewarm. I want hot coffee and I want a cold glass of water, right? Period. That doesn't work inside of a family dynamic. That doesn't work inside of a relationship with a spouse all the time. And so I remember one of my first sponsors, he would piss me off. I mean, not just kind of, I'm talking flipping piss me off. Because if I'm having a bad day, in my mind, I'm having a bad day. In his mind, I got an opportunity to have a great day, right? So I just got my head up my butt, right? And he's just like, you just need to remove it. And so if I'd call him and I'd start complaining, I mean, about the simplest, easiest thing. Just if I just was complaining about anything and not grateful. As he told me, he said, I've never met anybody that get drunk when they're happy. I was like, well, I'm not happy. I'm pissed off. He goes, because you're not grateful. He goes, if you're focused on gratitude, then you'd be ecstatic, right? Because all those stuff. And it ticked me off. And so if I started to argue with him and I just wouldn't shift my mindset, he'd say, okay, well, hey, go home. Start your day over. And to start a day over with him was go home, get undressed, get in the shower, take another shower, get back out, put on a new set of clothes, and go about your day.
How many times in your life have you done that?
I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk. But what it was, I'd be like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. The first time I done it, it's like, nah, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. It was fine. Don't ever call me again then. Click, hung up. Man, why? I mean, it's if I'm telling him that I want what he has and I want him to walk through life with me, but yet I'm not going to take his advice, then he's like, I'm just not going to waste my time with you. And so I went home, I took a shower, changed clothes, and called him. And I'm like, look, I did it. He said, you feel any better? I said, well, I'm not going to basically tell you if I did, because if I don't, I'm going to have to go home and take another shower. He said, well, yeah. He said, go to a meeting then. You called your sponsor. You've taken another shower. You started your day. Go to a meeting. You don't feel better there? Go to another or call me. If not, you can always go to bed. Go home, go to sleep. He said, because I've never met anybody woke up drunk that went to bed sober. And those simple things like that, right, is when it gets back to that focus of how you're living and how it carries over and into that service. I just have to continuously remind myself that level of intentionality doesn't work well in the workforce, doesn't work well in the office or at home to that level all the time. And so I'm grateful for every man that I get to work with daily in recovery, and through the progression of my, from about 8-9 years sober forward. So that would have put it somewhere in 2002, I started Power Realty, which was a full service real estate brokerage firm based out of Alpharetta. Of the first 15 guys that I hired, 13 of them were 12 of them were still working with us when I sold that company in 2017. Within the real estate world, that's not very commonplace. I could walk down the halls of our office at any point in time, and if I asked you how you're doing, it wasn't just a, hey, how's your day going? It was like, hey man, are you squirrely? You thinking about having a drink? You know, how are you truly doing? So every company, everything I've done, I have incorporated recovery into it. If you would have told me then that I would be running a men's ministry that's serving men at the capacity we are and housing all the men that we're housing and all that, I'd have told you that you're crazy, dude, because I ain't got time for that, right? Like, I don't have time for that. I may be on their board, I may be writing them checks, but I'm not leading the organization. And so, but those daily disciplines we've been given of, you know, surrendering to God, clean house, and work with others. I mean, that's what was told to me, right? Not diminishing my faith, not diminishing the 12 steps, but at a core ideology of surrender, clean house, and work with others. And so putting that all in through what was the downturn, I don't remember if you remember or not, 2008, 2009 real estate market around here was just a little soft, you know. FDIC was collecting banks like kids collect baseball cards, right? They were closing them down and sticking them in a drawer and keeping them. And I had a little bit of free time on my hands. And so we just started serving more intentionally. Had an empty house that we had done a deal on. And, you know, before you know it, you've got a couple guys that are living in there that just in relationships. And then before you know it, that house is full. We need another house. And, you know, it progressed from a grassroots perspective, because of availability of time. God will remove the obstacles in front of you to have you do his work. You may fight it or you can surrender to it. You know, if I tell you back, this was probably 2008, 2006, 2006 or 7. It was before the market softened up. I was laying in bed one night and I was wore slap out. And because I had a goal of when I got into the real estate business in 99 that this is what I was going to do and this is how I was going to do it. Well, my wife had bought into it. Everybody knew me that knew what my goal was. And if you had a piece of property on Highway 9 between Hembry Road, Upper Hembry Road, and the liquor store on Highway 9 at Forsyth County line, that stretch in North Fulton, if it was on Highway 9 and you owned it, I knew you. And if you listed it with someone else, I was going to take personal offense to it. And I'll never forget what she said to me. We were laying there in the dark and I was tossing and turning, just war slap out. My mind's racing 1,000 things of everything I've got going on that I think I need to do. And she said, you know, there's a difference between giving up and surrendering. I was like, what are you talking about? She said, well, you said you were going to take the market share away from John McMillan, was one of my dad's friend that had it. She said, you're going to take it away from him and you wanted to be the broker of record on that stretch. But she said, you never said how long you were going to keep it. So you did it. So now let it go and surrender that fact. It's not quitting. It's just surrender to value. Let it go. You did it. You know, it's that mindset of something that I would hold, even though I'd say I was healthy at that point in time, right? Sober, successful, career, married, some kids, like life was stable, but I still would hold on to those things that would control my ego or my pride or my identity. And I'm truly grateful for the 2008 through 2009-ish, because it removed some things from my hands that I had a tight grip on that I didn't realize how hard of a grip that I did. And knowing I had my wife's support, my family support coming into that already, of letting some of those things go earlier, it was kind of conditioning me to kind of live professionally the way that I was living privately, if that makes sense.
Tell me more about that.
Well, I mean, here's the thing is that you got folks go to church on Sunday, right? And then on the way out, you know, it's what are they doing? Same way, you got people that show up to an AA meeting and they can say something great. They can share with you great there. But then as soon as they leave the meeting, behaviors and everything else are not what they've just, the ideology and the mindset and the culture of what they've just left. And I'm grateful that I've got a father and a family that models what service looks like and what surrender looks like. You can be successful and be surrendered, right? You can be successful and be of service. But the world tells us that you got to go out and get this and you got to go out and do that. This is what success looks like, right? And that's what they sell. And I bought into it, right? I mean, give me something to sell, I'm going to sell it and would buy right into it. But when you truly have surrendered and just said, okay, hey, God, just use me how you're going to use me and let us be of service to you. I'm not perfect. Man, I haven't picked up a drink or a drug in the last 26 and some odd years now. But I've done some stupid stuff. I mean, just downright stupid. You look back and I was like, man, what was I thinking? Like, why would I go there? Why would I say that? Yeah, I mean, just actions. So it's not perfect. It's progress, not perfection. God's working on me daily, right? And I'm grateful for it. Conviction that I feel is not out of punishment. Conviction now is just out of, man, this is not the man I want to be. This is not the person I want to be. And having the ability daily to work in the recovery world, you're a target for, well, he says this, but they do this, or they're over there in this nonprofit, but they live here, or they do, and that's all pride and ego that attacks me, right? That I'll allow it rather than, oh yeah, hey, that's great. You want to know how we do it? Please just give me a call and I'll be happy to sit down and talk with you about it. But I'm grateful that my worlds have merged. And you look at, I don't even remember how we got connected, but when you look at the ability to connect all your worlds, professionally, privately, faith, service, community, recovery, all of it coming together, it just doesn't pull me, I should say, back off a point. Right? Like, oh, hey, this is my recovery world over here and I do this here, but man, I work over here and I'm, whining and dining these people every night. No, it's that my world has gotten far more intentional. And that's where I thrive in chaos. And if I don't have chaos, then I have to stay really focused, right? Because chaos, I'm allowed to be, running everywhere. And it's like, oh, we got a lot going on, bear with him here just a minute. But if you don't have a bunch of chaos going on, is how intentional are you being with those around you? And how am I using my time? And so that's my biggest conviction right now is just, am I being a good enough steward with the time that's been given and the freedoms that I have today? And this life is good.
So you talk about that there was kind of an organic process where your real estate kind of opened up the door for Vision Warriors to be birthed. When was the organization solidified?
Yeah, so when we started is about 9-ish or so a little over 9 years ago now. I'd have to look back and see exactly when we started housing men. And when we first started, saying we didn't have a name, we didn't have anything, because I didn't want an organization. I didn't want to be a nonprofit. I didn't want someone to look at it and say, oh, you're doing this for that reason. We just did it. And so our first house, we just had an address, right? We're still at that house, or I'd say the address, but we don't disclose all our locations other than our main campus. And we just would say that address. We just call it 123, right? 123, which is make up street, 123 Hopewell. And so, well, what's the name of your organization? We don't have an organization. It's 123 Hopewell. Well, wives, attorneys, employers, all those were these guys had, rightfully so, they didn't believe them. Like, who are you and where are you staying? Like, oh, 123 Hopewell. Well, what is that? This place is Kirk's, so we continuously had to I keep having to have conversations like, no, this is legit. This is what we're doing. We're just not, this is the way I serve inside of giving back. And so we finally, I remember fighting over a name, and I had a men's group that we met together every Monday morning, and we used to be wisdom hunters. and Wisdom Hunters transitioned or something, so we couldn't keep using that name through that. And so we went to the Pinnacle group, or Pinnacle something or another, and then we transitioned out of that, and then we started calling ourselves Vision Warriors. And so it was a men's ministry, but it wasn't a formal men's ministry. And so my wife, it's amazing if we just listen to him every once in a while, right? Is what she tells me all the time. Just listen to me more. I got some good info for you. I was fighting her, like, I got to come up with this name, like, because I just need to name it. I didn't want to put a business in or anything like that, but just name it. And I was trying to come up with all these names. She goes, you already got a great name, Vision Wars. I'm like, yeah, no, we need to. She goes, no, that's a great name. You need to call it Vision Wars. So I'd love to take credit that I'm the one that formulated this whole, that it was what my men's group was. But what she had seen in me was when I was with those men every Monday morning fighting for our personal visions and success in life, I was the only one in that group in recovery, right? But there again, it gets back to the problem before I put drugs or alcohol in my body was me. And the problem after I quit putting drugs and alcohol in my problem was me. It was no different than, if we sit down and talk with 3 or 4 other guys, it's what are we doing today? Where are we spending our time? What are we focused on? How are we serving others? And so I've fought every level of organization and every level of the next step of formalizing more what we do the whole way. I still argue with anybody when they say, oh, what's your program like? I'm like, first thing, we don't have no damn program, right? It's what's in my mind. Because then if we're a program, well, then we got to have this and we got to have that. And we're not a program. But when you congregate a group of individual men because of their individual desires of their own accord, that they want to stay sober and they want to transition past the sobriety date, because, it's great. April 24th, 1995 is when I got sober. But what have I done since then? How many opportunities and days have I squandered because I still was focused back on myself? I was gripped back down. What's in it for me? And what's really unique is that if we have a program, it's a program of filtration. We have a program and a process of limiting who comes in and trying to say that these are the things that we're looking for. These are the traits that we're looking for so that it's there. And when you put a group of adult men that choose to live together because of what they're looking for and are willing to be vulnerable, accountable, and transparent in the same environment, and something magical happens. And so I finally just kind of quit arguing over the fact that we're a nonprofit, right? That we are a men's ministry that looks a lot like a program. And if we have a program, it is of filtration and limitation so that we can make sure it stays a very healthy culture. But we actually filed our charter, filed our incorporation and chartered August of 2017 is when we were formally a nonprofit. Per the advice there again, it wasn't my desire. It was a board of individuals looking like me. These are the things that you're doing. You are the body of Christ. This organization is the body of Christ, serving those, providing food and shelter to those in need in your community. You're a church. Like, this is what y'all are doing. I'm like, oh man, you talking about fighting something. It's fighting, because then it's that, who are you and what are you going to be when you grow up? I mean, now you're accountable to an organization that needs to deliver a certain level of service and a certain level of accountability. And so it's been an honor. It's been quite the ride to do it. But if you'd have told me that I'd be doing today what I'm doing, 10, 15 years ago, I'm too busy for that. I'm going to serve. I'm going to talk with a couple guys a day, write some checks, serve on a board, but not in the trench. But I'm grateful that through obedience and through unavoidable obstacles, right? Like he's gonna chart the path one way or another, right? We're it's there. I'm grateful for everything that's happened to get me where we are today. So
The way you described your ministry is where I'm at in my life, I love the idea that the church is the hand and feet of Jesus, essentially, and that you're living your church, you're living your ministry. It's not a checklist program; it's a ministry. And so, here's what I want you to do. I want you to look into this camera, and I want you to speak to the heart of the man who's still out in the wilderness, how he can get in contact with you, how you are extending a hand of hope, inspiration, and encouragement to him.
So I know exactly where you are, and that's because I was where you are. And I have seen and been around a lot of men that have been exactly where you are. And what I'd like to offer to you is an opportunity. And that's an opportunity if you want help. If the pain that you're in, the discomfort that you're in, the fear, all those things, the guilt, shame, remorse that are holding you there, you have an opportunity to leave it behind. It is not easy, but it is simple. It is not easy, but it is worth it. The pain that you're in, the bondage and lies of addiction are lies. You are worth it. It is possible. All you have to do is give me a call, or anyone on our team, or any other 12-step support group in your community or your faith community partners.
Awesome. What's the website address that we can put at the link at the bottom of this?
Waron.org, WARON.org, waron.org.
And is there a number they can reach out to?
833-VW4-HELP.
Awesome.
And you may have to, I don't know the numbers, because I think it's like 894, but
We'll figure it out.
VW or help. So,
Well, Kurt, I just want to thank you as a friend. You've become a good friend in a very short period of time. And I'm excited for the doors that this friendship is forging in me. It's calling me higher to incorporate my professional life and my ministry life more in synchronicity, along with the platform with Testify. And I'm grateful for your time, and thanks for your share. Thanks for sharing your story.
No, thank you, brother.
Appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information, we'll have links on the bottom of this episode. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for watching Testify, What's Your Story? If you like what you've seen, please hit the like and subscribe button for more content. Thanks for joining us.